All right, the 2025 RC10Talk Vintage Shootout recap. Interesting events. I'll just go over essentially how each car did or what I used and what I didn't. I just want to point out that I got most of the footage for the qualifiers and mains, but the camera battery did run out throughout. I think it was like in the middle of the truck A main, and so I missed the last half of that main, and then I didn't have time to recharge the battery for the two-wheel drive buggy main. So unfortunately, I don't have footage for those. I was running 5 classes through the day, so I was constantly using the camera. I didn't have much time to charge the camera between heats to keep it charged enough. So eventually that came to bite me, but no matter. All right, let's go through bit by bit. We'll start with the RB Type R for the Y2K Buggy class. On Saturday, the buggy felt really good, and then I intentionally set it up to have a bit of a tall ride height because the last time I ran it at the Fall Brawl, the track was really blown out, and so I figured I'd need more ride height, more droop to sort of make it feel better. So on Saturday it was good, and especially in the back section of the track where there's this tabletop, and if you hit it just right, you can clear the tabletop. So this was doing that on Saturday. It was great. And then on Sunday, it felt really wobbly because it was riding so high. It just felt different. So the first round of qualifying for a lot of these cars, I basically just crashed on the first lap. I guess you can call it the yips. But I had a lot of issues in the first round of qualifiers for most of these classes. But yeah, this one was feeling really wobbly. So then for the second round, I changed a few things. I think I moved the rear shock angle inwards a bit. Is that what I did? No. Sorry, I took preload out of the shocks to drop the ride height, and that helped a bit. But then I figured, okay, I really need like a slightly softer front end because it was oversprung. So I changed the front springs. And then on the rear, I changed the shock angle. And for the main, the car actually felt quite good. I qualified third despite all those difficulties. And in the main, I was keeping up with the leader until I made a mistake, but at least the car had pace. But then I broke out early because one of the drive shafts popped out. So I have to go back and check, maybe reduce the droop a little bit to keep the drive shafts in so they don't pop out. So anyway, though, despite not finishing that race, I think the car is quite promising. Overall, not too displeased with it. So it's just too bad that I couldn't finish the race. 2-wheel buggy, I ended up using the Kyosha Pro X. My original intent was to use the Losi Double X. So I brought the Double X, the Pro X, and my Triumph for Saturday practice. The Triumph felt really good during practice. I really liked it. But the shock travel on that isn't quite as well suited to bigger jumps. So I figured that's a better car to use at Adrenaline RC for the Vintage Nationals, because those, at least as of last year, they had like smaller jumps for those layouts. So if they do the same thing this year, I think the Triumph would be good to bring to that. So then it was between these two, and the Double X suspension felt really wonky, and the Pro X felt the best setup. It wasn't perfect, but it was the most comfortable among those three across the jumps and the bumps and everything. So I stuck with that. I think I qualified second. I finished maybe fifth or something. The E-main was a real mess. It's too bad I don't have a recording of that, but it was a mess anyway. But overall, pretty happy with the buggy. This thing can take a lot of abuse. That track, as much as I like racing on it, it's quite varied. Like there are sections that are rutted, there are sections that are smooth, dry, dusty. You get a bit of everything on that track, and so it's actually rather difficult to put together a clean, consistent run, race to race to race. And in 2-wheel buggy, it's certainly the hardest to do that. So I don't have right now a buggy that's probably perfect for that track, but the Pro X did very nicely. And I was keeping up with the people I normally compete with. So okay, that's fine. I just didn't have a great A main. Stadium truck, the Double XT was really good. If anything, it was a little bit under geared. I think my spur gear is a little too big in that. Motor temperatures are a bit on the low side, so I can probably find a bit more speed with the truck. But nonetheless, I did get TQ. I did win the main. Although a few other trucks were faster and they were catching me, but either they passed me and then made a mistake, or they couldn't quite get past me. So I ended up staying ahead through the end and ended up winning the main. But certainly I can find a little bit more straight line speed out of that truck. But overall, like, it jumps great, handles great, can't really complain. The T3 for the Y2K Stadium truck, suspension was a little stiff on that. I found myself rolling over in certain areas where the XXT wasn't doing that. So it could just be perhaps the rear was over damped. So I tried laying down the rear shocks a bit, going to the inside hole in the tower. That certainly helped, although it made it perhaps a little too soft, and it cornered much more sharply. So it's going to need a little bit more work on the suspension. But despite all the abuse I put through that, the body held together, although I scraped up a few decals, and I still managed to win. It was a pretty small class this time. We only had 3 trucks. So it wasn't exactly a difficult win. But hopefully in October, if we do that class again, we'll get a few more people turning out for Y2K Stadium truck. I'll try to make this a little better for that event. If not, then I have my Kyosha RT6 that I could bring. Maybe I should bring that as well, just to compare them. So okay, that's Y2K. 4-wheel buggy was I brought both of these, the XX4 and the Cat 2000 EC. Again, on Saturday they both felt pretty good. The XX4, I don't have the clicker locked out, so that does make it a little difficult to drive on a bumpier track that's a little dustier. So I couldn't drive as hard into corners as I could with the Cat, which has a locked 4-wheel drive system. So I decided to put the XX4 aside, and also it still needs a bit more suspension work. It still felt a little bouncy. The Cat 2000 felt much more plush and easy to drive over bumpy sections on Saturday. By the time Sunday came around, I was all over the place with this thing, with the Cat, and it still drove okay, but not as well as it did on Saturday practice, and I found myself really beating the hell out of this car. I'm surprised. The only thing I broke was some O-rings that hold down the wing, but I had so many flips and rolls in this thing. I feel really bad about that because that's not typical for how I drive. I'm usually a better driver than that, but yeah, had a kind of a rough outing with the Cat. Still managed to TQ and win, but that's really because the guy who was faster than me, he had mechanical issues with his car. He was driving really fast, way faster than I could handle with this, but he ended up braking. So it was more like a win by default, which is kind of hollow. Although, to be fair, you know, I was still facing some pretty quick 4-wheel drive RC10s behind me. And essentially, I was trying to limit how hard I was driving the Cat, which allowed those RC10s to sort of stay closer than they otherwise would. And the reason is because the Cat has really aggressive steering. And I experienced that at RC Excitement a couple years ago when I brought this car, but that was a much higher grip track. I figured on a track like this, it would be more manageable, and it kind of was, but it still had very aggressive steering. So I was playing around with the dual rate. I was playing around with even just the throttle endpoint, just not giving myself access to too much throttle so I don't get too crazy coming out of corners. And so it was a little slow on straight line speed, which meant that 4-wheel drive RC10s could keep better pace with it. So it was more about just calming the car down and just trying to run like smooth, consistent laps rather than running super fast laps, which it could do, but it was just a little too aggressive, actually way too aggressive in steering for what I was really prepared to do for that day. I did try to increase the roll center for the A main. I thought about going from the blue front shocks to the black front shocks as well, just to like really go to an extreme. Yeah, and I changed the number of piston holes on the front. I had 4 piston holes open. I went down to 2. So just to try to calm the front down. It helped a little bit, but it was still quite aggressive. So maybe not the best car to use for that specific track. I'll have to, maybe one day I'll bring this to the Vintage Nationals, maybe. So for the October race, the Fall Brawl, at least for the 4-wheel drive class, I want to try to focus on the XX4. Lock the clicker down, get the shocks working a little better. This should be that's my plan, is to do that. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, I just wanted to do a quick debrief of the event because there is some lost footage because the camera ran out of battery. And I also just wanted to like go through in my own head the fresh in my mind thoughts about how each car did and what I plan to do next time. I would like to do the XX and the XX4 for the next race there. And then again, find a little extra speed in the XXT. This general fleet here is pretty good to use. You know, the only things I would probably switch out is maybe for Y2K, if I'm not running the RB Type R, I would run the Kyosha RB5. And then for 2 Buggy, maybe in the mix here, I could include the Traxxas TRX3. Yeah, or maybe my RC10 team car. I haven't run that in quite a few years. You know, something that can take abuse, because that track can be pretty abusive. Yeah. All right, anyway, that's it for now. I'll post the race videos soon. Thanks for watching.